The White House says we probably will not get a decision until the fall, but the debate continues to grow over who will run the Federal Reserve once Chief Bernanke leaves. Fed Vice Chair Janet Yellen had been seen as the odds-on favorite, but now there are hints the president may be leaning towards picking Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary and National Economic Council Director. Jim Frischling of New Oak Capital and Rob Morgan from Fulcrum Securities join me now to weigh in on the future of the Fed and what it's going to mean for the market. Jim, Larry Summers, not really the top name that we had heard bandied about. And now this new report that the president's pushing him.
Well, I do think those who think that Summers is going to make a comeback, because he still is from a low percentage of people think he's going to win, but in terms of those who thinks he might rally to be the president's choice, the president seems to like to surround himself with ex-colleagues and friends, and there's no question he likes Summers. But what the Democrats, or the group of Democrats who signed that letter, are basically putting forward is they really want to see Yellen in that position, and they are certainly politicizing this Fed, I guess, chairman nomination pretty early. Well,
it would be certainly pretty early, but at the same time, one of the things that the market has certainly liked, and Janet Yellen has been a big portion of this, has been quantitative easing. We like $85 billion a month. Stocks keep hitting new highs. 23 new highs for the S&P 500 this year, Rob. So why not go for a Janet Yellen? Is President Obama trying to kill the market with this choice of Summers?
Well, Cheryl, I do think that she's still the odds-on favorite, but I think Larry Summers really doesn't like financial regulation, and markets are in line with that. And also the bond vigilantes, they don't like someone who's considered an inflation dove. And as you said, Janet Yellen likes quantitative easing, so I guess she'd be considered a dove. So I think Janet Yellen is going to be picked, but I'm not sure the markets will necessarily like that.
All right, Jim, go ahead.
No, I'm going to agree with Rob. I actually think Yellen is going to come out on top. I think she has consistently voted with the FOMC majority. She's been a little more dovish in terms of being a little concerned about inflation, and where Bernanke has been so strong on not worrying about higher inflation, and instead really focusing on job growth. But she has voted with the majority. I think she's been a great number two. She's well thought of by her peers. People think she's a good pulse on the public. And again, I think this is a moment where the president can really make a mark on the Fed and appointing the first woman in its history. I don't think that should go without some consideration.
So, I mean, that has to be addressed. This would be the first time in the 100-year history of the Federal Reserve, guys, that we would have an actual woman running the Federal Reserve. I mean, we still haven't had a woman as president. I mean, if you want to politicize the choice, Jim, man, the president really would politicize this one. It'd be a huge football if he goes back to Larry Summers. So I'm sorry, but it has a lot of issues when it comes to women. Let's talk about his time at Harvard, for example.
I think Harvard certainly is something, and I'll tell you, taking a step back, deregulation and kind of the removal of Glass-Steagall. A lot of people, while the market did pop initially, a lot of people blame the financial crisis on those moves, and I think people tend not to talk about that. But Glass-Steagall and the removal of was a major contributing factor, and that would be a contentious point if Summers is put forward in terms of his confirmation.
Rob, Senate Democrats are already saying, and they're making this loud and clear, that they want to see Janet Yellen, and we still think it sounds like today that she's the odds-on favorite. Though, is there another dark horse that could overtake her, do you think, Rob, in terms of taking over this job from Ben Bernanke next year?
Well, I mean, certainly, Cheryl. I mean, probably the biggest surprise would be if Chairman Bernanke is reappointed and he actually wanted the job. I think he's ready to move on.
But he looked pretty bored on Capitol Hill, Rob. I've never seen him with his face as scrunched to his wrist as I did 2 weeks ago. But anyway, go ahead.
Tim Geithner, certainly another name that gets bandied about, but I think Janet Yellen and Larry Summers are probably the two front runners right now.
The bigger issue here, Jim, obviously from a market's perspective, and this is where you and Rob really come into play, is what happens with the markets and quantitative easing and tapering. We've had this discussion before. We're expecting tapering to happen, but could this backdrop of Ben Bernanke's replacement upset what the market is expecting in the next 3 to 4 months? I mean, you all do trade and advise your clients based on what the Fed is going to do or not do, in your opinion.
Well, again, along those lines, I think we're in uncharted territory, because we've had a Fed balance sheet expansion to record levels of $3.57 trillion. Now they've got to pull back on that. And I think how that's done is really going to, in a large part, determine some of the fate of many markets. No candidate actually has experience in pulling back. But I will say that I do like the idea of the number two and a little bit of more of a consistency in transition maybe being best for the markets right now.
And Rob, really quick, you know what, Janet Yellen, at least she would be pushing for employment. I can't really see Larry Summers being the guy that's going to push for employment. He's going to go from the other side. He's going to go